Alright, so we're at the tail end of the year, so that means we're doing our 100 years of movie series. We're finally finishing this up. We started from 1918, now we're ending in 2018. I'm going to actually be making a two-part video. This is going to be the first part. It's going to go all the way from 2006 to 2011. I'm going to be picking my favorite movie from each perspective year, with honorable mentions, of course, and I can't wait to talk about each one of them. So let's go right into 2006. What a fantastic year of films. But there was only one that survived. So let's go over my honorable mentions real quick, in alphabetical order actually. Alright, so for 2006, there's quite a few things that I really liked. The first film being Apocalypto. This is Mel Gibson's film, before he kind of went crazy. Maybe he was crazy the whole time, who knows. But Apocalypto follows Jaguar Pa, a young Mayan warrior, who is going through, more or less, lots of trials and tribulations, lots of warring factions, and you just see just a really you know, harrowing adventure between his family, his tribe, and just a lot of different things. There's a lot of blood, a lot of fantastic visuals, a lot of really great practical effects. This is a really fantastic film, and if you haven't seen Apocalypto, and if you get a chance, because this is like out of print or something, get it somehow. So definitely check out Apocalypto if you've never seen this movie. This is a great film. Anyway, let's move on from there. Alright, moving on from there is actually the reboot of Bond, in my opinion, Casino Royale. This is one of my favorite films from this year. Absolutely in my top three. This is Daniel Craig. He got Blonde Bond. This is the first time he got him. And he is recreating the original Casino Royale, which was not a part of the Albert Broccoli Eon Films kind of Bonds. But this is a soft reboot. You got Eva Green. She's so attractive. But anyway, I'm getting distracted. Casino Royale is a fantastic first movie of the Blonde Bond franchises with Daniel Craig, and absolutely is stunning. It's definitely one of the more action-packed and also really gritty Bonds. You gotta, you know, because Bond was always kind of smooth talking, always gets the girl, kind of just like a joke in a way, but not really particularly, you know, taken seriously. He's got, you know, lots of quirks about him. But with this one, it took a serious turn. It has a very serious tonal nature of the entire film, and that's what I really love about this gritty Bond. And absolutely fantastic addition is this awesome steelbook with Casino Royale. So check this movie out if you haven't seen it. It's definitely one of the best Bond films of all time. Probably my favorite. Alright, moving on from there is a really gut-wrenching film with Clive Owen, Children of Men. This is another great steelbook. But this is a fantastic film about a post-apocalyptic world where more or less children have not been born in years. And I mean, like, I think 20 or so years. It's just been a long time. And there's a lot of just despair and a lot of just grimy and gray. And just like this kind of film cover shows, there's just a lot of desolation and despair in the film. And it drenches it. Well, there's a lot of civil war and a lot of people, a lot of factions fighting each other, and that's what this movie more or less is about. And as you see Clive Owen descend, trying to help this one person who's pregnant somehow, and it's just a miracle. So who knows? We'll see. So Children of Men, definitely check this movie. Have you not seen this movie? It's a really great one. Alright, moving on from Children of Men, we have Martin Scorsese classic, at least one of the more modern classics. We have The Departed. We got Leonardo DiCaprio. We got Matt Damon in here. We've got Jack Nicholson and Mark Wahlberg. This is a stacked cast, at least with a lot of modern faces. And we also have, you know, Jack Nicholson from the past. But this is a really great gangster film. I mean, I really don't have to talk about this film too much because, I mean, it's one of those films that is pretty classic, at least in a lot of people's minds now. So I'm going to ship this off to Boston, and we're going to keep talking about other honorable mentions. So moving on from there is actually a lesser known film than The Departed and all the ones we've just previously talked about. The Fall. Now this has got Lee Pace in it. It's got David Lynch and Spike Jonze kind of helped produce this film, but this is by Tarsem, who is a director that I am not fully aware of. All I know is that he filmed this film in quite a few different locations. In fact, I might just as well read in the back. There's 18 different countries and over a 4-year period that this film is directed in. These are one of those films that's like a fantastical journey that's not really put together in a traditional storytelling aspect or element. There's something about the plot that doesn't entirely make sense. It's kind of like a fairy tale between Lee Pace and this little girl. And that little girl is kind of, I'm going to butcher the heck out of this name, Katinka Yintaro. This is in 1920s Los Angeles. She's in a hospital, and he's telling her adventure stories of, you know, this fantastical world that they're, you know, more or less in. And it's a gorgeous film, and that alone is why this movie, I'm talking about it, is because it's, you know, like I said, it's formed over 4 years in 18 different countries. It took a long time for Tarsem to get all of the footage of just all these beautiful shots and these different landscapes and set designs and all these natural set designs that were there. It's a gorgeous film. It may not entirely make a lot of cohesive sense, but it's a really fantastic movie, at least for the visual aspect, and the storytelling is really unique as well. So I definitely check out The Fall if you haven't seen this movie. Now we're going to my second favorite of the year. Is one of my favorite movies of all time. Darren Aronofsky's The Fountain. This is with Hugh Jackman and Rachel Weisz. I love, speaking of fantastical elements, we just talked about The Fall. I absolutely love the score of this movie, the triple kind of narrative in this movie where there's 3 different layers of the past, the present, and the future. There's the Spanish conquistador in the Aztec temple, the sun god, and you have modern age time with Hugh Jackman and his wife, and then you also have the future. But there's a lot of fantastical elements as well, as you can tell by this cover alone. If you've never seen this movie, I really don't want to get too much into it because it's just a really fun trip, and it's a really short one as well. An amazing score by, I'm literally going to blank, and it's going to just drive me off the wall if I can't remember the score. I have it on CD, and I just absolutely love it. Clint Mansell, and his score for this film is just enchanting. I really love Aronofsky's visionary journey of this movie. It's definitely not for everybody, but it's definitely one of those films that speaks to me, even if it's, you know, not entirely surface level. But I really enjoyed this movie, and if you haven't seen the Fountain, I highly recommend checking this film out. All right, moving on from there to another honorable mention. This one's a little bit more fun. We got Little Miss Sunshine. This is a great, heartwarming film about this family that's super dysfunctional. You got Steve Carell as the dad, Toni Collette as a mom. You got Paul Dano as one of their kids who doesn't want to talk, really loves reading Nietzsche and all that stuff. Alan Arkin is the dad, and he's just hilarious because he's just, you know, doesn't want to be there. He's just a grumpy old man. He's a pervert, all that fun stuff. Abigail Breslin is, you know, this Little Miss Sunshine. This is family going all the way to this beauty pageant for their daughter, and it's just such a lovely film. And you also got Greg Kinnear, who is, I guess he's the dad. I should have said that. Steve Carell is the suicidal uncle. I apologize. And it's just this journey of a lot of just trauma involved, a lot of fun, a lot of laughter, a lot of sadness, a lot of, you know, smiles. It's just like the cover suggests, and the title, Little Miss Sunshine is, you know, a heartwarming tale. It does definitely bring some sunshine in your life if you've never seen this film. So definitely check out Little Miss Sunshine if you have not seen this movie, because it's a great one. All right, 2 more honorable mentions. We're almost there. The first one being Christopher Nolan's The Prestige. Christopher Nolan directed this movie with Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman. We also have Michael Caine in it, Scarlett Johansson as well, and even David Bowie, who I absolutely love as Nikola Tesla. This movie is a film about tricking you, and that's what I love about this movie. I don't really want to talk about it too much, but if you haven't seen it especially. So more or less you have this fictional, historical kind of drama between these 2 magicians who absolutely hate each other and trying to figure out their secrets between each other, and lots of twists and turns in this movie. It's quite a film, and it's definitely one of the better ones. It's one of the best Christopher Nolan films, in my opinion, and it's highly rewatchable. Even if you know some of the things that go on, it's still a fun time, and there's just a lot of really great tricks in it. And also David Bowie. Come on, David Bowie's Tesla. It's amazing. It's awesome. Check out The Prestige if you haven't. So let's go on to our final honorable mention, and that final honorable mention involves hands up like this when we're talking to people on TV and the camera. That's Talladega Nights. Some of you may hate me for this, but I absolutely love this movie. John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell played these NASCAR drivers. You've even got Sacha Baron Cohen, who is this French driver. It's an absolutely fun film. It's got a lot of really stupid one-liners in it. It's one of those films I kind of grew up with during my teen years, and just one of those fun films that I can definitely just put on, watch it with some friends, have a lot of one-liners that just make me laugh. And I absolutely enjoy every aspect of this movie, even how stupid the entire plot is, and I constantly love this every single time I watch it. So definitely check out Talladega Nights if you haven't. So let's actually move on to my favorite film of 2006. This one should be fairly obvious. I've talked about it in the past quite a few times. It's the absolutely amazing, fantastical Guillermo del Toro's Pan's Labyrinth. I've talked about this movie, I think, a few times on this channel. I'm in love with this film. I really love Doug Jones' performance as Pan. You have this just fantastical story intermingled with this historical epic. You have this fantastical story mixed in with this historical drama that's taking place in Spain. In I almost said James Franco. Franco's Spain. This is right at the height of the Spanish Civil War happening, going on at the same time that this girl who doesn't really want to be a part of all the things and the harsh realities of what's going on in her life, we don't know as an audience member if what she's imagining is true or not. And that's what I love about this movie as well. It's got this fantastical element of she meets Pan, she has to rescue her mother and her baby brother who's about to be born, and she's just trying to get out of this situation. It's very tragic. It's very it has a lot of trauma involved with it, especially that fantastical element on top of the historical element as well. You have those combinations coming in full circle with a lot of just amazing performances by different characters, and it's a dark film. It's a lovely film. It makes me cry every time I watch it, and it speaks to me. It speaks volumes every single time I watch it. And I watched it earlier this October, because this is an October film for me. Honestly, I can watch it anytime I want to, but this is absolutely my favorite Del Toro film, and I'm absolutely in love with every aspect of this film. Maybe save the frog and some of the CGI dated effects, but that's okay, because Doug Jones plays a couple creatures in this movie that are very scary and also at the same time very creepy. And so, if you haven't seen Pan's Labyrinth, this is my pick for 2006. It's absolutely one of my favorite foreign films of all time. Oh, by the way, I didn't say this. It's all in Spanish. I'm sure you all knew that, but some people don't like reading when they watch films, and for some reason, you can stay that way if you want, but you shouldn't. You should watch films that involve other languages as well. It helps a lot. Anyway, this film is fantastic. Absolutely check this film out. This is my pick for 2006. Let's move on to 2007. Alright, 2007, it has no shortage of honorable mentions as well, so let's just get to it. The first one being the remake to 3:10 to Yuma. I have not seen the original, but this one with Russell Crowe and Christian Bale is just a really great Western, and honestly, it was one of the first Westerns I really even watched back in the day, kind of when I was around 17 or so. I watched this movie, and I was just blown away how gritty it was, and obviously I watched films after this because there's a lot of inspiration from a lot of different things put into this film, and so I really love this movie. It has a lot of complex characters in it, especially between the two. You see Russell Crowe having to deal with a lot of the things Christian Bale as a homestead owner, as they're trying to get to Yuma at the train at 3:10, and so there's just a lot of complexity, especially with Russell Crowe's gang. You have Ben Foster, who is his right-hand man, who is just an amazing evil son of a bitch, and it's great. I absolutely love this movie. It's very complex, and it's actually just a really fun film, and it actually got me into a lot of the other Westerns. So check out 3:10 to Yuma, the remake, if you haven't. I can't wait to get the original, eventually get that on Criterion, so we'll see. To another Western that is probably one of my favorite cinematic pieces I've ever seen, The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford. Look at that man right there. We Brad Pitt, we got Casey Affleck. Casey Affleck is that coward. This movie is shot gorgeously by Roger Deakins. This movie has a fantastic score as well, and a fantastic direction. This is a movie that was a sleeper for a lot of the other films that came out this year, at least in the popular mainstream circuits. This is just an amazing, phenomenal movie. It's a little long, but it's gorgeous. The set designs are fantastic, and the performances are just top-notch. So if you have not seen The Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, you should. It's got some historical accuracies. Obviously, it has some Hollywood liberties involved with it, but, That's what every one of these movies has. So if you haven't seen this movie, it's a gorgeous film. It's a fantastic one. Check it out. All right, we're moving on from Westerns to a World War II film, Atonement. This is a nice British film. This is directed by the director of Darkest Hour, Joe Wright, and he really knows how to really capture certain set designs and certain set pieces. He really, I think, puts a lot of effort into those things, on top of top-notch performances by a lot of characters in here, with James McAvoy and Keira Knightley. Has this transcendental performances between different time periods, before World War II, and after World War II as well. And it's got some of the best shots I've ever seen in any cinema. Especially one particular shot that I'm thinking of, which I'll have you watch, involves a beach. It's just so long and so gorgeous and so just, it's enchanting. So anyway, and also there's a really great thing near the end of the film as well that I'll not talk about. But Atonement, if you haven't seen this, it's a very sad film, but a really great one. It's phenomenal. It's one of the best movies of all time. My co-host, he's recently been on this. My co-host from my old podcast, Doug Smith. This is one of his favorite movies of all time. He got me on board with this, and it's also my roommate, Hannah, who will be on one of these Criterion Closet Picks very soon. She also got me involved in this. So, Atonement, check it out, please. Alright, moving on from there, we're going to go to a foreign film. Speaking of Del Toro, which we were talking about a little bit earlier, we have one movie that he believed in a lot and gave a lot of production for. We have The Orphanage, and this feels straight from Del Toro, but he just produced it. We actually have, the director from Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. Oh, why? He had this fantastic ghost story of this woman who used to be an orphan who has come back to her childhood orphanage, and a lot of things are going awry. It's gorgeous. It's a slow burn. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of little intricacies. It feels very European, even though it's from a Mexican filmmaker. It's a really great film, and it's really fantastic. It's a Spanish film, so check this out. Another movie you're gonna have to read in all in Spanish. And when I say it felt like a European film, the set design and the architecture. So that's all I really meant by that. Anyway, if you haven't seen The Orphanage, definitely check this movie out because it's phenomenal. It's also a happy and sad and also scary movie. So check this one out if you haven't. Alright, the next movie we're going to move on to is another film that my friend Doug Smith actually recommended to me, The Man from Earth. This has got Bill from True Blood, John Billingsley. But I probably did just a really, really bad impersonation of him. Anyway, this movie is a really cheaply made budget movie. Jerome Bixby is a sci-fi writer who made this film. It almost feels like a television film, like it came made from like a maybe made-for-TV movie. So there's not very much budget in it, but that's not what matters about this film. What matters about this film is the dialogue and the thrill, the interesting story. So you got, on a cold night in a remote cabin, Professor John Oldman gathers his most trusted colleagues for an extraordinary announcement that he is an immortal who has migrated over 140 centuries of evolution and must now move on. So it's asking if he's a Cro-Magnon or not. And he presents this to them, and what's so interesting is it's a film that's kind of like 12 Angry Men, before trilogy. It's all in one location. It has a tight cast. It's all about the dialogue, and it's all about the back and forth between all of the cast members. But they're asking him questions that anyone who studies history or anthropology or biology would understand, but he keeps tripping them up, and so you wonder if he actually is from this time period that he says he is from, and it's just that compelling. If you have a chance, I'm going to put this in the link down below. I'm actually going to put several of the movies in the links down below if you haven't checked this out. Some of the ones that are a little harder to find, I'm going to put down in the link down below, so please click on those and buy them if you want. From Amazon. So this is one that I highly recommend you check out because this is a fantastic film and it's just really, really smart writing. I love it. So check out The Man from Earth. Alright, we're going on to one of the best movies of all time in my opinion. No Country for Old Men. The Coen brothers did an amazing job with Javier Bardem. You got such a great character there. He's so crazy. But anyway, you got Josh Brolin and you also got Tommy Lee Jones. They're going after Javier Bardem, who is a serial killer. There's no soundtrack to this film. You don't realize that sometimes because you gotta put that in the background of your mind. But No Country for Old Men is just a really gritty, modern-day Western that is just bloody, is filled with a lot of really great performances. The setting, the lighting, is just everything about this movie is just almost flawless to me, and I wouldn't recommend it enough because I'm sure you've already heard this film or you've seen it before, but if you haven't, check out No Country for Old Men because it's one of the best movies of all time. So anyway, let's move on from there. Alright, so last movie for honorable mentions of 2007, we have Zodiac. This movie is incredibly scary. We all know Ted Cruz is the Zodiac killer, so we don't really need to watch this movie because we already know who it is. It's a really fantastic film. If you haven't seen Zodiac, more or less, go see this film. Alright, let's go to our favorite movie of 2007. This should be a no-brainer, at least for me. That is Daniel Day-Lewis and the amazing There'll Be Blood. This movie pulled me right in when I first saw it. Paul Dano, Daniel Day-Lewis, such great characters, such great enemies in this film. I don't really even know where to start with this movie. You got an oil baron, Daniel Day-Lewis, along with his son, is going around traveling, more or less trying to buy farms because he knows there might be oil in some of these places, and he's trying to undercut people. Anyways, it's the rise and fall of this great oil baron, and you see a lot of the depravity and the greed involved in this movie. It's based on a novel called Oil, but this movie is directed by fantastic P.T. Anderson, who is this is probably my favorite movie of his. This is definitely like the generic pick for P.T. Anderson, but I don't care because this movie is just that damn good. And Daniel Day-Lewis playing Daniel Plainview, can't talk. He is just an amazing character actor, and you see him unravel in this entire journey with just a fantastic score. You have chilling cinematography. You have insane performances, some of the best performances I've ever seen in my life. So definitely several of these characters. Paul Dano being one of the farmer's sons, who's actually a pastor as well, tries to undercut him, and you'll see how that ends up near the end of the film if you haven't seen it. But There'll Be Blood is my favorite movie from 2007, and absolutely will be probably till the end of time. This movie is just that damn good, with so many great performances. It's a very slow burn of a film, but that's the whole point. It's kind of like a small trail of oil all the way to this very big cesspool of oil near the end. And so this small trail lasts a couple hours and then eventually gets to the very end. And so you'll see what I mean by that if you haven't seen it. Check out There'll Be Blood if you haven't. So let's move on to 2008. Alright, so for 2008, I'm actually going to try to speed this up a little bit. I'm just going to talk a little bit briefly about each one of them. First one in my honorable mentions list is The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, a very sad film about a Nazi concentration camp, more or less involving these two kids. One of them is a Jewish kid who is in this camp, and the other one is this kid who really doesn't know what's going on, why this war is happening. Doesn't really end very well, but it's a really sad film. Really great book as well, but definitely check this movie if you haven't seen it out, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. Alright, next we're going to go to a Coen Brother film, Burn After Reading. This is one of the more independent Coen Brothers films, but I really absolutely love this movie. You got so many great members of the cast here. We got George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Frances McDormand, Tilda Swinton, John Malkovich. All these people are just crazy in this crazy scenario that J.K. Simmons at the Office for Homeland Security is trying to really put together, and it's just really hilarious, really insane, and absolutely worth your time. Check out Burn After Reading. Alright, moving on from there is the movie that pretty much stole the year, but not my favorite, and that is The Dark Knight. I talked a little bit about Batman Begins when I picked my favorite movie for 2005. Dark Knight, you see a return of Christian Bale. You also see the legendary performance by Heath Ledger, before obviously he tragically passed away. This movie is really, really great. A little choppy near the end, has some, some story issues, but other than that, it's a near damn perfect film, and it's one of the best superhero films of all time. I absolutely agree with most people on that. It's just fantastic, and Christian Bale's performance as Batman. More or less, Bruce Wayne is much better, and Heath Ledger's performance is just one of the best of all time. Definitely one of the best Joker performances of all time, and definitely a really different interpretation that Christopher Nolan created with this character. And you know, you also have Harvey Dent in it as well, who I'm literally blanking on what it is. Aaron Eckhart. I just literally remembered it as I was talking. And so, really great performances. Two-Face as well. So, really, really fantastic film. Check out Dark Knight if you haven't seen it. Everyone should see it by now. Moving on from there, they got these kids getting on Clint Eastwood's lawn. Gran Torino. This is I'm new and late to the party on this one. I saw this about a year and a half ago. Really good movie about racism and you know, letting go of the past, and also just embracing some of the things of the past as well. A lot of different aspects of this movie. Clint Eastwood, this is probably one of the best movies he's directed. This and Mr. Groover probably are the movies that I would say are some of his best, but definitely check out Gran Torino. Clint Eastwood did fantastic. With the new one coming out, The Mule, I feel like this is like a very similar type movie, but I don't know. We'll see, we'll see. Moving on from there, we got Catherine Bigelow's awesome The Hurt Locker. This movie is a great kind of modern tale of the Afghan and Iraq wars that happened in the early 2000s and mid, and is still kind of going on today in a way. But anyway, you have Jeremy Renner in this movie as well. This movie is just a fantastic film. It definitely won some awards. I think it won the Oscar for the year. But it's a really great movie, a really great drama, and a really great psychological toll on all these people in this movie. These people are trying to defuse bombs. So it's really, really gut-wrenching. It's a really good movie. Alright, so we're talking a little bit more about some superhero films. The first in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe, we have the Iron Man. I don't know why I said "the" in front of it. It's Iron Man. It's Robert Downey Jr. We have an amazing, amazing film here. And honestly, kind of just kickstarted this entire giant thing all the way up to Infinity War, Endgame, and all that fun stuff. But anyway, this movie is really great. It is just, you got Robert Downey Jr., who's hot off his kind of just drug habits. This movie is just one of the better films of Robert Downey Jr.'s career, and I feel he definitely kickstarted him back on track. We have Jon Favreau, who believed in this, who directed it as well. And you even have the great Jeff Bridges as the villain. So it's a great movie. Alright, moving on from there, we're going to Sweden to a vampire film, Let the Right One In. Actually, I have talked about this a little bit, but this is one of the better vampire films. It's very, really dark, because it's during like the winter times of Sweden, where you don't really see very much sunlight. But you have this very dark and depressing kind of town, and this vampire, this little girl, lives next door to this other kid who more or less just wants to be friends with somebody and doesn't really have anyone, except he runs into this girl, and there's some really weird shit about this girl. She doesn't really go out during the day. She always sees him at night, you know, vampire stuff. But anyway, if you have not seen this film, I really don't want to get too much into it. It's a Swedish film. It's all in Swedish, but it's really fantastic, and if you haven't seen it, it's definitely one of the best movies I've seen, especially from this country, and definitely one of my favorite horror films as well. So check out Let the Right One In if you haven't. Let Me In is the American remake, and that was a good one as well. Not as good as this one, not even close, but this is my opinion. Check this one out if you haven't. Alright, we're going actually to more of an independent film by Jonathan Demme. We got Rachel Getting Married. You have Anne Hathaway, who used to be an alcoholic, a drug addict. Something tragic happened, but they're all getting together, this entire family, for Rachel, who's going to get married, obviously, hence the name of the movie. And so Rachel is her sister, and is really, really excited to be married to a different family. And you just see these huge families collide, and a lot of you know, storytelling that kind of just unravels and shows you what everyone in this family, their problems with each other is, and there's, you know, some trauma in the past, and it's just a really great film. Jonathan Demme, I need to see more of his films. I've only really seen a few, Silence of the Lambs being one, you know. But this is one of those movies that I was just really happy I saw recently, and so I'm really happy to talk about it as well. So check out Rachel Getting Married if you haven't seen it. Alright, next is a comedy that I really, really enjoyed, and that is Role Models with Seann William Scott and Paul Rudd. And I absolutely love Paul Rudd, and I will probably watch anything he's in. And Anyway, this movie is about these two guys who worked for this energy drink company that something goes awry real quick and they have to do community service, help these kids. One of them is a LARPer, you got right there. You got McLovin right there. And the other one is Ronnie, who is just this rambunctious kid who doesn't have a father figure. And you can see that in this movie, but that's not what it's really about. The movie is really about these two guys growing up and trying to help these kids and fighting themselves a little bit too. It's a hilarious movie. I just sold it as like kind of a drama. I don't know why I just did that, because it's just full of a lot of one-liners, just really hilarious situations, a lot of funny dialogue, and just, it's a great movie. You haven't seen Role Models, it's fun. It's a really great time. Alright, we're moving on to, I think, the movie that won the Oscar of the year. Slumdog Millionaire, Danny Boyle. You've got this really great performance by Dev Patel. In the slums of India, Dev Patel, you see from the very, very beginning of his life all the way to the very, very end, I guess, of the movie. But he's trying to get to this girl from his past. And all ends in a culmination of a very, like, who wants to be a millionaire kind of thing. But it's the Indian equivalent of it. And so you see that right here. And you see all these different things going on between him. It's a really great drama, really fantastic performances, especially by Dev Patel. And you see a lot of just really insane set pieces, because you just see the slums of India that a lot of people, that's not, you see Bollywood India, you don't really see the gross aspects of it. And so that's what I love about this movie. A lot of good set designs, a lot of good performances, really great movie. I understand why it won the Oscar. So let's move on. Alright, let's talk about a movie that I will unapologetically love. I don't care what people think about it. Tropic Thunder. Absolutely love this movie. Robert Downey Jr. blackface. That's insane. I don't remember people being as outraged as they are now about things. But anyway, how did they make that? I don't know. Jack Black. You've got, I'm literally Danny McBride. You've got Ben Stiller. You've got a lot of different characters in it. Matthew McConaughey. There's just a lot of really characters you wouldn't... Oh, and Tom Cruise. How in the world did I forget that? Tom Cruise is probably one of the best parts of this movie, actually. If you haven't seen this movie, it's about Ben Stiller, who is more... He's in Vietnam trying to make a film, a Vietnam War film, very Platoon-esque, but it just goes all awry, and they run into some old Viet Cong, and, you see just a lot of just really silly things happen in this movie. It's really fucked up as well. So, but anyway, I don't really care. Check out Tropic Thunder if you haven't seen it. I mean, come on, watch it. All right, last movie on my honorable mentions list. This is probably one of my favorite films of the year. Absolutely, Mickey Rourke in The Wrestler. I really enjoy how well this movie captures the people who watch wrestling and the people who don't really know the aspects of wrestling that I used to know. I used to watch wrestling quite a bit in my youth. I used to watch a lot of the reruns of Macho Man Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, that 80s wrestling, all the way into like the 90s, where I watched WCW all the way to WWF, and I kind of transitioned to E when I was kind of transitioning out of it with Hulk Hogan or with The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. But anyway, Mickey Rourke plays this character of this washed up wrestler who is fairly young but struggling to deal with his family, his addictions to drugs, to sex, to all sorts of different things. This is a very a movie that I'm fairly certain that the World Wrestling Foundation, or I guess Entertainment now, does not want people to see, because it's definitely like, you have the dramatized storytelling. It's like a male soap opera. That's what The Wrestler and wrestling is about. I mean, I used to watch wrestling. I used to really enjoy it. I know a lot about it for some reason, still in my mind. But anyway, The Wrestler, you've got this really fantastic performance by Mickey Rourke, and it's directed by Darren Aronofsky, because I really love his films, and this is one of the best ones he's ever made. So check this out. It's a really gritty film, but it's really, really, really good. So check out The Wrestler. So let's talk about my favorite movie of 2008. 2008, this one should be very obvious to you. It used to be in the background of my old videos. It's right there now, but it's In Bruges. I've talked about this movie a million times. I love In Bruges, I love Colin Farrell, I love Ralph Fiennes, and I love Brendan Gleeson. I love the characteristics of every one of these characters. They are all flawed. They're all in this, you know, this town in Belgium that they don't ever, none of them want to be there. You know, some of them try to make it a better time. Brendan Gleeson, who's just trying to sightsee and stuff, and the other one just doesn't want to be there. It's all mopey. Ralph Fiennes eventually tries to capture them. You get a little bit of the story in the background when you watch the film. I don't really want to talk about it too much, but the performances, the comedy that's really dark. You've got one of my favorite directors of all time with Martin McDonagh. And I absolutely love every aspect of this movie. It's perfectly fits my personality. It's dark, it's serious, it's got a lot of philosophy and religious undertones as well, but it's very hilarious in a comedic sense as well, and just has just all that silliness involved with all those other things I just mentioned combined, and it just makes it just such a great time. If you haven't seen In Bruges, check it out. Go buy it. I'm going to put this one definitely in the description. Check this movie out if you haven't. In Bruges is one of my favorite movies of all time. Absolutely will never shut up about this movie. In Bruges, in Bruges, in Bruges. Alright, let's move on to 2009. Rolling right along 2009. We're going to have a couple more honorable mentions. The first one being 500 Days of Summer. Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Zooey Deschanel played this pretty fun couple that at the same time, love is just a fickle bitch, honestly, and that's what this movie is all about. Is they're in and out of falling for each other, and whether or not it'll work out, you'll see if you haven't seen it. 500 Days of Summer, one of those best romantic comedies that I definitely would recommend checking out if you haven't seen it. All right, next is the best film by Neil Blomkamp, and that is District 9. The other one's not the biggest fan. I don't like Chappie. Elysium's all right, but District 9 is the one to watch. You got the South African director who made this commentary on these aliens, like literal aliens from outer space, who land in Africa and are shipwrecked there and having to deal with the local natives of this city. And so you see a lot of the technology and a lot of them kind of getting together, and you've got this main character who has to deal with all that stuff. And so check out District 9 if you haven't. It's definitely one of those more creative sci-fi films. And it's a really fun time. It's also really serious as well. And there's a lot of fucking craziness, because I'm just trying to do a South African accent. I'm just as bad as Leonardo DiCaprio, aren't I? Anyway, now we're moving on to a movie that I'm sure some of you have never heard of, or maybe you have. But anyway, Four Lions. This movie was made by Alamo Drafthouse, actually. And this involves four really, really stupid people. This is kind of at the height, kind of near the end of the Al-Qaeda terrorist kind of stuff, before ISIS really became a thing. So anyway, Four Lions is about five really silly, this whole movie's a slapstick comedy. You five silly guys who have accepted Islam as their religion, and they're taking it very, very seriously. So they're going through jihad. So they're trying to go through the really extreme measures, and they're trying to eventually kill themselves through suicide bombing. And that it sounds like a very serious topic to talk about, and so it's about ideology, but it's also more about the idiots involved in this farce. And so it's a really funny movie. If you haven't seen it, it's got Benedict Cumberbatch, who makes a cameo near the end, which is really, really funny, but it's not too well known of a film. It's definitely came out at a really weird and specific time. I feel like with Tropic Thunder as well, both of these movies have kind of a factor about them that I think certain audiences probably would not find this to be very funny. And to me it is hilarious, because it's just, I understand going into this movie how slapstick this movie is. And so that's how I approach these films. And so definitely check out Four Lions if you have the stomach for it. If not, you can move on, and we'll have a good time. I'm going to put this in the description down below for sure. Alright, moving on to a more serious but also comical tone. Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Basterds. This movie is all about killing Nazis. If you haven't seen this movie, it's one of the better Tarantino films. It's got like 4 languages in it, like Italian, German, French, and English, I think. But it's a really, really fun film with Christoph Waltz playing this really, really bad guy. Hitler's in it. It's definitely one of those movies that takes historical fantasy to the new level, and I love it. It's just these Americans who take out Hitler along with a French girl. and it's just fantastic. And if you haven't seen Inglourious Basterds, you should check it out if you haven't. Alright, so let's move on to a film actually directed by David Bowie's son, Duncan Jones, Sam Rockwell in Moon. This movie is just a really, really great independent film that I think a lot of people know about, but maybe some people haven't heard of it. Sam Rockwell plays this character who is alone up on this moon base and just starts imagining things, things start happening. He's just kind of going about his day-to-day. You know, he's about to end his entire shift. But some interesting science fiction comes into play as well. So if you haven't seen it, it's definitely worth your time. And it's definitely one of the better Duncan Jones films. I think he did, the last thing he did was Warcraft, so not really good track record, but Moon is a really great time, especially with Sam Rockwell, so check it out if you haven't seen it. Based on Cormac McCarthy's novel with the same name, we have The Road. This is starring Viggo Mortensen in it, and it is a very bleak and dark and depressing story of this father and his son who are going through this post-apocalyptic world where everything is just really dark, there's really no sunshine, just really, it's so depressing, and a lot of just really grimy and gross things happen in this film. So if you're really looking for a time to be really depressed, but also, you know, a little hopeful, it's a little bit of hope in this movie, just a small one. It kind of just presents itself as it is. It's The Road, and it's a really good time. If you haven't seen this movie, when I say a really good time, at least in my eyes, I like bleak and depressing shit. So check out The Road if you haven't. If you don't want all that, it's cool too. So, all right, let's get to another happy and depressing place with Up. Disney's Pixar's Up is a really great movie. Really sad in the first 10 minutes. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. But it's just about this old man who is stubborn, wants to stay put, and this kid who's just a Boy Scout who just like shows up on his door. They go on into this adventure with all these balloons. They take his entire house with him because he just wanted to be left alone, you know. And so anyway, it's a really great movie if you haven't seen it. And it's also really sad, but also really heartfelt. Disney Pixar knows how to make you cry, and that's what Up does. So it's one of the best ones. Alright, now we have two more honorable mentions to talk about. The first one being a movie made by Bobcat Goldthwait with the late, great Robin Williams. That is World's Greatest Dad. I love this movie. I haven't seen it in a little bit, but I've talked about it before. It's one of those movies that I feel is under the radar for a lot of people. Robin Williams, I think, was in RV in the same year, so this is definitely the better of the two films. Absolutely. But he plays this dad who is not getting along with his son at all. His son is really fucking weird, and he's just trying to find himself. And you see that as this character who breaks down multiple points in the movie, and you'll see what happens in this movie. There's a lot of tragedy involved and a lot of hope as well. A lot of really good things. We wouldn't expect Bobcat Goldthwait to make something like this, and so I really love this movie. If you haven't checked it out, I'll have it down in the description below for sure. Alright, last movie on the honorable mentions list is a really fun one. I think they're going to make finally a sequel to this movie, and that is Zombieland. This movie is really fun with Woody Harrelson, Jesse Eisenberg, one of the only movies I really like him in. You got Emma Stone as well, and you also have Abigail Breslin, who's the youngest, and it's this comedy kind of rules movie. These zombies who've taken over, and you know, you've got these four characters who all meet together. I think two of them are sisters. And they do really at all fit together whatsoever, but a lot of the hilarity ensues during this really hellacious kind of event that they're in. You know, the whole world's turning into zombies. They even run into some famous people, and you'll know what I'm talking about if you haven't seen it. Anyway, Zombieland is my last honorable mention. Let's move on to my pick for 2009. So my pick for 2009 might confuse a lot of people, but it's one of my favorite superhero movies of all time, and it's absolutely my favorite Zack Snyder film, and I'm not really that big of a fan of Zack Snyder, but that is Watchmen. And I'm talking about the ultimate director's cut. This movie is just amazing to me. I absolutely loved it. I remember when the trailer came out, the Smashing Pumpkins song just drew me in. The performances, you've got just so many amazing things about this movie. and this really desolate kind of sci-fi take on Cold War that's going on, and it's if the Cold War kept going, and we also have superheroes who are in reality. They got some fantastical elements about that as well. Only a few people in this story really have fantastical abilities, Ozymandias and Dr. Manhattan, but the rest of them are very realistic, and you can actually see this kind of takes the Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan take of that dark and gritty, realistic aspect of if these superheroes were actually real, what it would look like. But obviously, like I said, there's some fantastical elements as well. But this movie is a really great adaptation of Alan Moore, and the only thing that really is different is the ending, and that ending still serves as the same purpose as the novel. The ending I won't really give away, but both of those endings from the novel itself and also from the movie are the same thing, so it really serves the same purpose. And so you see that unravel, and so I think this is one of the best adaptations I've ever seen. This is probably why it's my pick, is because I think that the book, which is eventually going to be a television series that HBO is about to start, which I'm really excited about. You see all these different characters dealing with the trauma of their past, where they're reliving their glory days, but you have several people in different camps, and you don't know who to trust, and it's a spy noir, and it's just all these really cool different aspects of just adding all these different these genres together, and it's just a really fantastic film. I really love it. I love the score. And definitely the best Zack Snyder. I just think these are the type of films he is meant to make. Maybe not particularly all of the DC stuff he's been making, because I'm just not a fan of that. But I really love this movie. Haven't rewatched it in a while, but I have really fond memories of it. Still, my pick from 2009 is Watchmen, so smile. Alright, so speed round, we're going to go from this to 2010. We're finally in the 2010s. We only have 2 more years to talk about on this video. So let's go into it right now. The first movie being 13 Assassins. We have Takashi Miike's, a Japanese film. It's a really cool kind of retelling of Seven Samurai, but with a different kind of aspect from it. A more bloody aspect and more colorized aspect, because that's what Takashi loves to make in his films. And I absolutely enjoy this movie. It's really bloody. It's fantastic. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Put it in the description down below. Alright, now we're going to move on to a depressing film with Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams in Blue Valentine. This movie is one of my favorite romantic films, but it's also really sad and tragic because it's pretty realistic, and a lot of the events that happen in this movie unfortunately descend upon some of the events that happen in this movie happen to descend upon certain types of people. And everybody, honestly, just to different varying degrees, and so it's really sad, but also very realistic, so that's probably why I enjoy it. So, Blue Valentine, if you want to cry and also be really uncomfortable, watch this movie. So, now to a happier place, we're going to talk about DreamWorks, because we haven't talked about DreamWorks really that much, but How to Train Your Dragon. This movie's adorable, and it definitely will make you smile. Has really great morals in it, and also really cool concept with these Vikings who have found dragons, and it's just a really fun movie. It's just, and it might make you cry a little bit, who knows. Anyway, check out How to Train Your Dragon if you haven't seen it. Alright, we're moving back to another foreign film, to a really gritty foreign film, I Saw the Devil. This is a South Korean film. This movie is fucked up. It's a lot like Oldboy in that sense. There's a lot of just really bloody, unapologetic things happening in this movie, and you see it transform into the characters involved with this movie. So you can see it right there in the cover. It's a bloody mess. So check that movie if you haven't seen it. It'll be in the description down below as well. Alright, next is the Steelbook of Inception, another good Christopher Nolan film. This one is probably one of the more popular films for Christopher Nolan. You've got Leonardo DiCaprio, you've got so many people in this cast. You've got Cillian Murphy, you have Ken Watanabe, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Marion Cotillard, Ellen Page, Tom Hardy, Tom Berenger, and even Michael Caine in this movie as well. It's about these people going into dream sequences, trying to erase memories, recreate them, If you haven't seen Inception or really know much about it, you should check it out. It's definitely a trippy film. Visually, it's fantastic. Really great performances, really interesting storytelling. It's not traditional in a traditional sense, so it's really fun. I absolutely really enjoy it. I haven't seen it in quite some time, but it's definitely a good movie. So check out Inception if you haven't seen it. All right, next we're going to talk about, I think, the movie that won the Oscar for the year, and that is The King's Speech. This movie is an amazing film with Colin Farrell and Jeffrey Rush. As you've got Colin... did I say Colin Farrell? I meant Colin Firth. Jesus Christ. But anyway, Colin Firth is the king who's got the speech impediment, and Jeffrey Rush is trying to fix that, and because he's got to deliver some, really important State of the Union kind of addressed to his people in England during an impending kind of world war. And so you have a lot of fantastic performances, especially by the two men, but also with Helena Bonham Carter, and it's just one of those movies that it's a slow burn, a very patient film, where you see a lot of the things unfold. So yes, anyway, if you haven't checked out King's Speech, you should, because it's definitely the movie that I completely agree, actually, that this movie should have won the Best Picture. It's one of the best movies from this year, and definitely worth a watch, for sure. Alright, let's move on to a silly film that I absolutely love, with Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell and the other guys. This is probably the movie I quote most when it comes to Will Ferrell films. He's not really playing himself. He kind of is, but not at the same time. This movie is really, really silly, really, really stupid. I really don't care how people view this movie, but it's just such a fun movie. You've got some nice cameos from Sam Jackson and The Rock, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and just, it's a fun movie. If you haven't seen the other guys, check it out. It's got a lot of just ridiculous plots to it, so check this movie out if you haven't. Alright, let's move on to another silly movie, but this is in a more horror vein. It's Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. This is a really cool Mondo edition in the Steelbook. You've got these two kind of backwards rednecks. They're not really backwards, just, they're misunderstood. They just live out there going fishing in this dark cabin, and it's got a very Evil Dead vibe. These kids all go out to this cabin, kind of just like your typical horror movie, and they see these two, and they accidentally all start killing themselves on accident, and they think that they're doing it, and it's just a really silly movie. It's definitely one of the more interesting takes on that genre and that trope, and I really, really enjoy this film because of its kind of just those accidental comedic parts of it, and also those horror elements. So it's a really cool combination of horror and comedy that I think is really unique. So check out Tucker and Dale vs. Evil if you have not seen it. It's a really fun time. So check it out, and also get that Steelbook. I think it's at Walmart right now still. Alright, another Steelbook, but a different movie, kind of a musical comedy. That is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. This movie is a really, really fun adaptation of the comic. This has got Michael Cera in it. Directed by Edgar Wright. This movie is really, really fun time of Michael Cera, who is Scott Pilgrim, who in a very stylized fashion has to fight off the 7 evil exes of this retelling of like Snow White, trying to get to Ramona Flowers, this really impressive and beautiful woman who has a scary past that Scott Pilgrim has to deal with, usually fighting through music aspects. It's really creative. I really love the elements of this movie. It's very comic book based, like I said. It's based on that comic itself, and so a lot of the visuals are borrowed straight from those, and it's really quirky, really fun time. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, check it out. Alright, now for the last two movies are both sad in my honorable mentions list, but very different sadness. First one being Toy Story 3. This movie is the end of the Toy Story trilogy. Here we have Toy Story 4 coming out. I honestly don't know why, but I mean, I'm looking forward to it, but at the same time I still don't know why, because this movie ended kind of in a nice element. And so anyway, this movie will make you cry. Check it out if you haven't seen it. You've all seen Toy Story 3, haven't you? And the last movie is actually a movie that kind of hits close to home because it's talking about Southwest, kind of rural Missouri, and that is Winter's Bone. This is one of the first movies that Jennifer Lawrence was in, and this movie is telling of a story of this girl who is raising her brothers and sisters, and in this really small town, like many of the small towns I'm around, and having to deal with meth as well, and this just small town vibe, and a lot of just backstabbing, and a lot of just people not really trusting each other, at the same time community as well. And so there's just a lot of just really weird stuff going on in this movie, but it's a hard movie to watch, but it's also a really great film, really great drama. You get some thriller aspects as well, because you don't really know what's going on. So definitely check out Winter's Bone if you haven't seen it. It's a really great movie. And anyway, let's move on to our pick for 2010. So what did I choose for 2010? My choice for 2010 is Darren Aronofsky's Black Swan. We have Natalie Portman right there, who plays one of the best performances of her entire career. I think Volux, which I think is how you pronounce it, which is coming out very soon, is kind of similar to this in a way, but she's more of a pop star. This is like a ballerina. But anyway, this movie is fantastic because you have this character who is trying to perfect this dance, but is trying to become the Black Swan in some kind of capacity. There's a lot of elements of horror and drama. There's a lot of different aspects of this film that are really hard to describe and fairly unique to this storytelling. It reminds me of a little bit of The Red Shoes from 1948, and I think this is Darren Aronofsky putting his own stamp on this thing. You have Natalie Portman and Mila Kunis, who are competing to try to become the Black Swan for this particular play. It's a really gritty film, and it's really, really fantastic. And it has, like I said, some fantastical elements about it too. It's got some horror aspects as well that really, I think, sell this movie. And I think that this movie really drives the line between what it means to become an artist, be lost in your own art, and to get to a performance, maybe a performance that maybe is either life or death for them, because it's what they live and breathe. And so that's what I love so much about this movie, is somebody pushed so far to the edge that, you know, it ends in some kind of tragedy perhaps. And so that's what I love about this film. I think Darren Aronofsky pushes some boundaries here with some of his other films. He likes to push people all the way to the edge of, you know, what they might be comfortable with, and then pushes them off. And I really like that aspect of this movie. So Black Swan, if you haven't seen it, it's a really great time. It's a really great performance by Natalie Portman. Mila Kunis also does a really fantastic job as her rival. So let's go on to 2011, the final year of this video. Alright, I'm going to be really quick about 2011, just to talk a little bit about the honorable mentions. The Artist is a really great film. I think it won the Best Picture. Yeah, so really great movie, kind of a throwback to the silent era. And so that's probably why it won, because it just gave them all nostalgic about Hollywood and stuff. You got Javier Bardem and Alejandro Iñárritu's Biutiful. This is really gut-wrenching and really soul-crushing drama that I really love. And if you haven't seen it, check this out. It's one of the better foreign films I've seen. Alright, we also have Cabin in the Woods, which is a really nice kind of like Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. It's got that mix of horror and comedy, but it's definitely more in the horror sense. You got Joss Whedon, who helped write a little bit of this. Didn't direct it, but he helped it. And then Drew Goddard, who did recently Bad Times at the El Royale. So it's a really fun movie as well. Next, we have Crazy Stupid Love, which is one of the best romantic comedies of all time. We got Steve Carell, who's been cuckolded by his wife. And we have Ryan Gosling, who's trying to help him. Julianne Moore, Emma Stone. All sorts of people in it. It's definitely one of the best movies I've ever seen when it comes to romantic comedies. If you haven't seen this one, you should check it out if you don't really know much about it. Next is another Ryan Gosling film. We have Drive. This movie is fairly legendary. A lot of people really know about it. And this movie's got a really fantastic soundtrack, really great performances, really minimalistic performances by Ryan Gosling. When I say that, I mean like not much dialogue, but more in the how he acts in certain circumstances. It's a really great noir if you haven't seen that film. Next is one of my favorite films by Martin McDonagh's brother, John Michael McDonagh. We have The Guard. We have Don Cheadle and one of my favorite actors of all time, Brendan Gleeson, and this really funny Irish kind of comedy. Don Cheadle's an American coming over, trying to help figure out why all these people are dying and all these drugs are in the Irish country. Really funny, dark comedy. If you haven't seen that film, put it down in the description down below. Next we have He Was Kind, He Was Smart, He Was Important, We Have the Help. Really great adaptation of the book, which I've never read, probably won't ever, but really great movie. I really enjoy The Help. Next we have a slew of some foreign films. I'll just talk about them each for a second. We have A Separation, which is a really fantastic and also hard to watch film, Iranian film, I believe. Check this movie out if you haven't seen it. It's hard to watch. And then next we have The Untouchables, definitely a change in tone. Really fun French film of these two characters who come from completely different backgrounds and come together. Really fun movie, in my opinion. Next we have The Raid Redemption. This is the first Raid. This is the movie that inspired the new Dread. This movie is really great. It's one of the best martial arts movies, and it's such great practical effects. Next we have Samsara, which is one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen. I talked about The Fall a little bit earlier. Very similar aspect, but more in a documentarian, non-traditional sense. Doesn't really have much of a story behind it. It's just a bunch of beautiful things about humanity and a lot of the things in nature. Check out that movie if you have not seen it. Alright, so the camera died, but anyway, let's continue on with my honorable mentions. I'm going to talk about the first in this trilogy of a fantastic reboot, in my eyes, the Planet of the Apes series that has just started off with Rise of the Planet of the Apes. We have James Franco, who is the scientist who meets the young Caesar, who is played by Andy Serkis, who does a fantastic job. Man, the graphics in this are just... the special effects and the CGI are just so well done in my eyes, and I just think that this is a really underappreciated trilogy. And so this is one of the first ones, so definitely check out this one if you have not seen it. Really great time. Alright, so the next gem I'm going to talk about is a pretty underappreciated film, at least in my eyes. That is Take Shelter. You got Michael Shannon, who plays this guy who is having apocalyptic visions and dreams of something is about to happen, a giant storm, and it's a phenomenal movie. I love the performances in it. It's very biblical in the things that happen in this film, and I think it's really worth someone's time. And honestly, I don't really want to get too much into it, but definitely check this movie out if you have not seen this movie, because it's just really great performances, really great set design, really great cinematography, and just a really great story overall. So check this movie out. I'll put that in the description down below as well. Now we're moving on to our last two films and the honorable mentions. The first one being Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life. This is one of the more recent additions to the Criterion collection. This is a gorgeous film. Terrence Malick's really well known for a lot of his cinematography and his storytelling in this particular film with Sean Penn and Brad Pitt in it. It's not really kind of just a straightforward kind of story, but it's definitely one of those stories that goes back in time and transcends time and space in a way that's just really well done. A lot of people don't really enjoy this film. It's kind of like a hit and miss for a lot of people. In my eyes, this film just has so many daring things about it, and I just love it how visually dazzling it is, and also just has some stories of childhood loss and trauma, and there's just a lot of things intermingled in this. It's very impressive take, and it's definitely one of those movies, like I said, that's either a hit and miss for a lot of people. So check out The Tree of Life if you have not seen it. It's definitely one of the best Terrence Malick films that I've ever seen. It's definitely visually one of the best films I've ever seen. My favorite movie from the year is Carnage. I really enjoy this movie. Despite how you view Roman Polanski, he makes good films. And this is one of those films that I greatly appreciate. A lot like when I was talking about A Man from Earth a little bit earlier, 12 Angry Men, the Before trilogy, Before Midnight, Before Sunrise and Sunset. I think I botched the order there a lot. But those films that really capture one space and time, like to really capture the dialogue of a film and the characters involved in it. This has a great cast of Jodie Foster, Christoph Waltz, you got John C. Reilly, and you also have Kate Winslet. These parents are meeting together in this apartment to deal with what two of their children have done to each other. And that simple premise is a really great starting off point for this black comedy of just really silly circumstances, a lot of conversations that literally lead to nothing. It's kind of just everyday situations and scenarios that you'll probably find yourself in, and that's what I find really compelling about this movie. It's a bunch of non-important information happening. It's a lot like Burn After Reading, when I talked about that a little bit earlier. It's very just like this, it's information that doesn't really matter, and a lot of the times these conversations are really happening in real life with a lot of different types of people. So that's why I love Carnage so much, and Roman Polanski crafted this film in this just tiny apartment, and it's just this, you know, thing that just all kind of naturally, holistically kind of came together, and I love that aspect of this movie. So those are my picks for 2006 to 2011. Later this month I'm going to be putting up 2012 through 2018, my favorite movies from those perspective years, and thank you so much for checking out this journey of mine. This has been such a fantastic series that I really love doing, and honestly I can't wait to revisit this maybe in a couple years. That way I might have some different perspectives and different movies that I've seen. A lot of these movies I probably haven't even mentioned because I haven't seen them yet. So what are your favorite movies from 2006 to 2011? Tell me down in the description down below. Did you like all my picks? If you didn't like any of them, that's perfectly fine. If you want, I have some links down below in the some Amazon, some links down there for you. Give this video a like. Don't forget to comment down below. Share this video. Don't forget to subscribe, and also hit that notification bell, and I'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.